The phone call that changed everything came at 3:47 a.m. on a Tuesday. Michael Chin, our family accountant for the past 15 years, never called after business hours. His voice was shaking when I answered, barely awake in my dorm room at Arizona State University. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. Alex, I need you to sit down. There's something about your grandmother's inheritance that you need to know immediately. My blood went cold. Grandma Patricia had left me $180,000 when she passed 2 years ago, money that was supposed to be untouchable until I graduated college, money that was supposed to secure my future, help me start my career as a financial advisor, maybe put a down payment on a house, money that had been sitting safely in a trust account, managed by my parents as trustees. What do you mean something I need to know? Michael's silence stretched so long I thought the call had dropped. When he finally spoke, each word hit like a physical blow. Alex, the account is empty, every single dollar. Your parents authorized multiple withdrawals over the past 8 months, all going to something called Jess Flow Yoga, LLC. My sister Jessica's yoga studio. The boutique fitness center she'd been posting about nonstop on Instagram for the better part of a year. The luxury wellness experience she'd been promoting to her 50,000 followers with professional photo shoots, expensive equipment, and motivational quotes about following your dreams. I sat there in my cramped dorm room, staring at my finance textbooks scattered across my desk, trying to process what Michael had just told me. The inheritance that was supposed to launch my career, the money that represented my grandmother's love and belief in my future, had been drained completely to fund my sister's vanity project. How is that even legal? I managed to whisper into the phone. Technically, it's not illegal, Michael explained, his professional composure cracking. Your parents were named as trustees with discretionary spending authority until your 25th birthday. The trust documents your grandmother signed included language about educational and business investments for family members. Your parents interpreted that very liberally. Very liberally. My hands were shaking as I grabbed my laptop, pulling up Jessica's Instagram account. There it was. All of it documented in glossy detail. The grand opening of Jess Flow Yoga 8 months ago, complete with a champagne toast and influencer friends posing with expensive equipment. The heated floors, the premium sound system, the custom meditation room with imported crystals. The designer athleisure merchandise with her logo embroidered in gold thread. Every post was a knife twist. Living my best life, she'd captioned a photo of herself in the studio's marble-countered juice bar. Dreams do come true when you have family who believe in you. Accompanied by a picture of our parents cutting the ribbon at her opening ceremony. Investment in wellness is investment in happiness, she'd written next to a video tour of the facility that probably cost more per square foot than most people's homes. Michael was still talking, explaining the technical details of how the withdrawals had been structured, but I wasn't really listening anymore. I was scrolling through month after month of Jessica's social media presence, watching my inheritance get spent in real time. The professional photographer she'd hired for her launch campaign, the social media marketing company she'd contracted to boost her follower count, the influencer events she'd hosted, complete with catered organic meals and gift bags for attendees. Alex, there's more, Michael continued, his voice getting quieter. I've been trying to reach your parents for weeks about some irregularities in the business accounts. The yoga studio hasn't made a profit since it opened. In fact, it's been hemorrhaging money. The lease alone is $8,000 a month, and that's before utilities, staff wages, or inventory costs. I felt sick. My sister had burned through nearly $200,000 in 8 months on a business that was failing from day one. Money that wasn't hers to spend. Money that represented years of my future financial security, gone to fund Instagram content and a lifestyle she couldn't sustain. How long has it been losing money? I asked. Since month 3. Your sister's been covering the losses by having your parents authorize additional withdrawals from your trust. They've been treating your inheritance like a business loan, except there was never any agreement to pay it back. The worst part was realizing this wasn't some impulsive mistake. This had been going on for months. Every family dinner where they'd asked about my studies, every time they'd smiled and nodded when I talked about my financial planning courses, every conversation about my future career helping people manage their money responsibly, they'd known they were spending mine recklessly. Michael, what are my options here? Another long pause. Legally, your options are limited while they're still trustees. But Alex, I think you should know that I've documented everything. Every withdrawal, every expense, every month, this business has been operating at a loss while draining your trust. If you want to challenge this, you're going to need evidence. Evidence. I was already screenshotting Jessica's Instagram posts, saving every caption about her family support and investment in dreams. Every photo of expensive equipment, every story about private yoga sessions with Phoenix socialites, every post about the luxury wellness experience she was providing. I'll send you copies of all the financial records, Michael said quietly. Your grandmother trusted me to look out for your interests, Alex. She specifically mentioned wanting this money to help you build a stable future. She would be heartbroken to know what's happened to it. As I hung up the phone, I stared at the latest post on Jessica's account from just hours earlier. A selfie in her empty yoga studio at midnight, captioned, "Sometimes the universe tests your commitment to your dreams. Grateful for family who never stop believing in me." The universe wasn't testing her commitment. She was testing mine. What she didn't know was that I'd been studying finance for 3 years, learning about fiduciary responsibility, trust law, and what happens when people mismanage other people's money. What she didn't know was that I'd been building relationships with professors, networking with financial professionals, and learning exactly how to trace money trails. What none of them knew was that I'd inherited more than just money from Grandma Patricia. I'd inherited her meticulous record-keeping habits, her belief in documentation, and her absolute intolerance for financial irresponsibility. They thought they were dealing with a naive college student who'd be grateful for whatever scraps were left. They had no idea what I was about to do next. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I spent hours creating a spreadsheet, cross-referencing Jessica's Instagram posts with the dates Michael had given me for the trust withdrawals. The timeline was damning. The first major withdrawal of $45,000 happened 3 days before her grand opening post. The second withdrawal of $32,000 coincided perfectly with her equipment upgrade announcement. Every single luxury purchase she documented on social media had been funded directly by my inheritance. By 6 a.m., I had compiled a detailed record of how my money had been spent. Designer yoga mats at $300 each. A sound system that cost more than most people's cars. Himalayan salt walls that she'd posted about with the caption, "Only the finest healing crystals for my tribe." A juice bar setup that included a $15,000 commercial-grade juicer that she'd never learned how to use properly, based on the employee complaints I found buried in the business's Yelp reviews. But the real shock came when I started calculating the actual business. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Performance versus the social media facade. Jessica had been posting daily about packed classes and amazing community energy, but when I cross-referenced her claims with the business registration documents that Michael had sent me, the numbers told a different story entirely. JustFlow Yoga had registered a maximum capacity of 30 students per class, but the revenue reports showed they were averaging maybe 8 paying customers per session. Her Instagram showed a thriving business with a waitlist for classes, but the financial records revealed that she'd been giving away free memberships to influencers in exchange for posts, discounting rates so heavily that she was barely breaking even on operating costs, and spending more money on photography and marketing than she was bringing in from actual yoga instruction. The most infuriating discovery was finding out that she'd hired a social media management company for $5,000 a month to create content that made the studio look successful. They'd been staging photo shoots with hired models posing as satisfied customers, creating fake testimonials, and even paying people to attend classes just to make the sessions look full for Instagram stories. My inheritance money had been used to create a complete illusion of success, while the business collapsed underneath the pretty facade. I called in sick to my part-time job at the campus financial aid office and drove straight home to Scottsdale. The family house looked exactly the same as always, with its perfectly manicured lawn and my mother's prized rose garden, but knowing what I now knew made everything feel different. This house, this comfortable suburban lifestyle, had been maintained while they systematically drained my future. I found them in the kitchen, drinking coffee and reading the newspaper like it was any other Wednesday morning. My mother looked up with her usual bright smile, the one that had always made me feel like I was her favorite child, though clearly that had been an act. "Alex, honey, what a nice surprise. What brings you home on a weekday?" I set my laptop down on the kitchen counter and opened it to the spreadsheet I'd been working on all night. I got a call from Michael Chen yesterday about my inheritance. The change in their expressions was immediate and telling. My father's coffee mug paused halfway to his lips. My mother's smile faltered, and she glanced quickly at Dad before looking back at me. "Oh, that," Mom said, waving her hand dismissively. "Michael worries too much about every little detail. You know how accountants are. Every little detail, like the fact that my trust account is completely empty." Dad finally set down his coffee and cleared his throat. "Alex, sit down. Let's talk about this rationally." "I am being rational. I've spent all night analyzing where my money went. Jessica's yoga studio has consumed every penny of my inheritance, and according to the business records, it's been failing since month 3. "Failing is a strong word," Mom interjected. "Jessica is building something beautiful. These things take time to become profitable." I turned my laptop screen toward them, showing the detailed breakdown I'd created. $45,000 for the initial setup, $32,000 for equipment that's mostly decorative, $28,000 for a social media marketing campaign that hired fake customers. Mom, she spent $15,000 on crystals that she claims have healing properties. That's my college textbook money for the next 2 years. "Your sister has a vision," Dad said, his voice taking on that defensive tone he always used when Jessica's choices were questioned. "Sometimes you have to invest in dreams." "With whose money, Dad?" "Because this wasn't your dream to invest in. This was my future that you bet on Jessica's Instagram fantasy." The kitchen fell silent except for the ticking of Mom's antique wall clock. I could see them exchanging glances, having some kind of silent conversation that excluded me entirely, just like they had when they'd made the decision to drain my trust account. "The trust documents gave us discretionary authority," Dad finally said. "We believed this was a sound business investment that would benefit the whole family." "Benefit the whole family how? By putting Jessica's social media career ahead of my education? By gambling my financial security on a business that's never shown a profit?" Mom's expression shifted from defensive to condescending, the way it always did when she wanted to end an argument without actually addressing the issue. "Alex, you're young. You don't understand how business works yet. Sometimes you have to spend money to make money. I'm a finance major with a 3.8 GPA, Mom. I understand exactly how business works. What I don't understand is how you justified spending my inheritance on rent for a yoga studio that costs more per month than most people's mortgage payments." "Jessica needed our support," she said firmly. She was finally pursuing her passion, building something meaningful. We couldn't let her down. "What about letting me down? What about the fact that Grandma Patricia specifically left that money for my education and future?" Dad stood up from his chair, a sure sign that he was done with the conversation. "Your grandmother left that money to help family. And that's exactly what we did. Jessica is family too. Grandma Patricia barely tolerated Jessica. She thought Jessica was spoiled and irresponsible. She left that money specifically to me because she wanted me to have opportunities she never had." "Your grandmother is gone, Alex," Mom said quietly. "We had to make decisions based on current needs and opportunities." Current needs. I pulled up Jessica's Instagram on my phone and scrolled to her most recent posts. Current needs like hiring a professional photographer for $3,000 to document her morning meditation routine? Current needs like importing organic bamboo flooring from Thailand? Current needs like installing a sound system that costs more than most people make in 6 months? They looked at the phone screen, seeing Jessica's content from a different perspective for the first time. The luxury items, the expensive treatments, the lifestyle that looked glamorous online but was completely unsustainable financially. "We thought the business would succeed," Dad said, but his voice lacked conviction now. "Based on what? Her Instagram follower count? Because I've done the math, Dad. Even if every single one of her 50,000 followers became paying customers, the prices she's charging wouldn't cover her operating expenses. The business model was doomed from day one. I showed them the spreadsheet I'd created, breaking down the actual costs versus potential revenue. The numbers were stark and undeniable. Jessica would have needed to triple her current customer base just to break even. And that was assuming she could maintain those numbers consistently without the expensive marketing campaigns that had been eating into the profits. She said she had investors lined up, Mom said weakly. What investors? Who's going to invest in a yoga studio that's been losing money since it opened? Who's going to put money into a business run by someone whose only qualification is having Instagram followers? The truth was starting to sink in. I could see it in their faces. The dawning realization that they'd made a catastrophic mistake with my money. But instead of apologizing, instead of acknowledging what they'd done, they doubled down on defending Jessica. Your sister works hard, Dad said. She's up at 5 a.m. every day, teaching classes, building her brand. Her brand that's built on a foundation of my inheritance money. Dad, do you understand what you've done? That money was supposed to help me avoid student loans. Maybe start my own financial planning practice someday. Instead, it's gone, spent on a business that was never viable. We can figure something out, Mom said, but she wouldn't meet my eyes. Maybe we can help you apply for more financial aid. Or you could get a student loan, like most kids your age. Like most kids my age. The dismissal in her voice was breathtaking. As if having a substantial inheritance that could have changed the trajectory of my entire life was just a minor advantage that I should be willing to give up for Jessica's entertainment. Most kids my age don't have parents who steal their inheritance to fund their siblings' vanity projects. We didn't steal anything, Dad snapped. We made a family decision based on what we thought was best for everyone. You made a decision that benefited Jessica at my expense without consulting me about my money. How is that what's best for everyone? But I could see in their faces that they'd already decided I was being unreasonable. They'd convinced themselves that what they'd done was justified, that Jessica's dreams were somehow more important than my financial security. They'd rather defend their mistake than admit they'd failed in their duty as trustees of my inheritance. That's when I realized this conversation wasn't about getting my money back or even getting an apology. This was about them revealing exactly who they were and where their priorities lay. They'd chosen Jessica's social media image over my future, and they'd do it again if given the chance. I closed my laptop and stood up from the kitchen counter. I want copies of every financial document related to the trust and Jessica's business. Every withdrawal authorization, every expense report, every contract you signed. Alex, you're overreacting, Mom said. Am I? Because from where I'm sitting, my parents stole my inheritance to fund a failing business, and now they're trying to convince me that I'm the problem for being upset about it. I could see Jessica's car pulling into the driveway through the kitchen window. Perfect timing, as always. She'd probably come home to celebrate some new milestone or crisis, completely unaware that her lifestyle was about to become much more complicated. Jessica burst through the front door with her usual dramatic flair, yoga mat slung over her shoulder, and a green smoothie in her hand that probably cost more than most people's lunch. She was wearing head-to-toe Lululemon, the kind of outfit that costs more than my textbooks for an entire semester, and her phone was already out, probably preparing to document whatever profound thought had struck her during her morning session. Oh my God, you guys, I just had the most amazing class today, she announced to the kitchen, before she'd even noticed I was there. This woman came up to me afterward and said that my warrior pose sequence literally changed her life. Like, she was crying actual tears of gratitude. I'm thinking of creating a signature series around it, maybe partnering with some wellness brands for sponsorship opportunities. She finally looked up from her phone and spotted me standing by the counter with my laptop still open to the financial records. Her expression shifted slightly, the practiced influencer smile faltering for just a moment before snapping back into place. Alex, what are you doing home? Don't you have classes today? We need to talk, Jess. Something in my tone must have warned her because she glanced quickly at her parents, both of whom were staring into their coffee cups like they contained the secrets of the universe. Mom was fidgeting with her wedding ring, a nervous habit she'd had since I was little, And Dad was doing that thing where he pretended to read the same newspaper paragraph over and over again. "Talk about what?" Jessica asked, but her voice had lost some of its usual bubbly confidence. I turned my laptop screen toward her, showing the spreadsheet I'd compiled of trust withdrawals matched against her Instagram posts, about where my inheritance money went. Jessica's face went through a series of expressions rapid fire: confusion, realization, guilt, and then something I'd never seen from her before, defensive calculation. She was weighing her options, trying to figure out how to spin this situation to her advantage. "Oh, that," she said, attempting a casual laugh that came out forced and brittle. "I mean, it's not like you needed the money right now anyway, you're still in school." The sheer audacity of her response left me speechless for a moment. Not like I needed the money. As if my financial future was somehow less important than her yoga studio fantasy. "I needed that money for my education, Jess. For graduate school. For starting my career. For having some financial stability after college. That money was specifically left to me by Grandma Patricia." Jessica set down her smoothie and crossed her arms, and I could see her shifting into full defensive mode. Grandma Patricia would have wanted the money to help family. She was all about supporting each other's dreams. Grandma Patricia barely spoke to you at family gatherings because she thought you were irresponsible with money. She used to lecture Mom and Dad about enabling your spending habits. "That's not true," Jessica snapped, but her cheeks were flushing the way they always did when she knew she was caught in a lie. "It is true, and you know it. Grandma Patricia told me directly that she was leaving me that money because she trusted me to use it wisely. She specifically said she didn't want it going toward what she called frivolous purchases." I pulled up Jessica's Instagram account and started scrolling through her posts from the past 8 months, reading the captions out loud. "Living my dream lifestyle thanks to family support. Grateful for parents who believe in investing in happiness. Money can't buy happiness, but it can buy the tools to create a happy life." I looked up at her. Every single one of these posts was funded by my inheritance. Jessica's defensive posture intensified, and she started pacing around the kitchen the way she always did when she was preparing for a fight. "You don't understand what it's like to have a vision, Alex. You've always been so practical, so focused on spreadsheets and budgets. Some of us dream bigger than that." "Dream bigger? Jess, your business has been losing money since the 3rd month. You've burned through almost $200,000 on a yoga studio that can't sustain itself. Businesses take time to become profitable," she said, echoing exactly what our mother had said earlier. "Rome wasn't built in a day. Rome also wasn't built with someone else's inheritance money. And Rome didn't spend more on marketing than it brought in from actual customers." I turned my laptop screen back toward her and pulled up the revenue reports that Michael had sent me. "Want to see the real numbers, Jess? Not your Instagram version, but the actual financial reality?" She glanced at the screen, and I watched her face change as she saw the stark red numbers, the consistent monthly losses, the complete disconnection between her social media narrative and the business performance. "Those numbers don't tell the whole story," she said, but her voice was getting smaller. "They tell the only story that matters. You've been operating at a loss for 5 months straight. Even your best month, you only brought in 60% of your operating costs. You're hemorrhaging money with no plan to stop the bleeding." "I have plans," Jessica said desperately. "I'm launching online classes, and I'm working on partnerships with wellness brands, and there's this retreat center in Sedona that wants to collaborate." "With what money, Jess?" "You've already spent my entire inheritance. What are you planning to use for these new ventures?" The question hung in the air, and I could see Jessica looking at our parents expectantly. Mom and Dad exchanged another one of their silent conversations, and I realized with growing horror that they'd probably already discussed this scenario. "We'll figure something out," Dad said finally. "Maybe a small business loan, or we could refinance the house. A small business loan. To throw good money after bad. To continue funding Jessica's delusions with even more family assets." They were planning to double down on their mistake, rather than admit it had been a catastrophe from the beginning. "You want to put the family home at risk to keep funding a business that's never turned a profit?" "It's not about profit," Mom interjected. It's about supporting your sister's dreams. Sometimes family means making sacrifices. For each other. Sacrifices like my college fund, sacrifices like my financial security, because it seems like I'm the only one making sacrifices here. Jessica suddenly perked up, as if she'd just had a brilliant revelation. Actually, Alex, this could be really good for you too. I've been thinking about expanding into financial wellness coaching. You know, helping people align their money energy with their life purposes. We could partner together, combine your finance background with my wellness expertise. The suggestion was so absurd, so completely tone-deaf, that I actually laughed out loud. You want me to help you teach financial wellness when you've just demonstrated that you can't manage money at all? I'm great with money, Jessica protested. I invested in my vision. I created something beautiful. I followed my passion, instead of just playing it safe all the time. You're great with spending other people's money. There's a difference. I pulled up her business registration documents that Michael had included in his files. Jess, do you even know how much your monthly operating expenses are? She hesitated, which told me everything I needed to know. It's around. I mean, the rent is $8,000, and then there's utilities and insurance and staff wages. It's $14,700 per month, not counting inventory, marketing, or equipment maintenance. Even if you packed every single class to capacity and charged premium rates, you'd need to bring in at least $16,000 a month just to break even. Your highest grossing month was $4,200. The number hung in the air like a physical thing. Even Jessica couldn't spin away from math that stark, that definitive. Those were just the early months, she said weakly. I'm building a customer base. For 8 months? Jess, most businesses that are going to succeed show some signs of growth by month 3. You've been declining consistently since you opened. I showed her the customer retention analysis I'd done based on the payment records Michael had provided. Your average customer attends for 6 weeks before they stop coming. That's not building a community, that's churning through people who try your classes once and don't come back. Maybe they're just not ready for the level of transformation I offer, Jessica said, but even she didn't sound convinced anymore. Or maybe your prices are too high for what you're actually providing. Jess, you're charging $150 for private sessions when established yoga instructors in Phoenix charge $75. You're positioning yourself as a premium experience, but your credentials are an online certification course that took you 6 weeks to complete. That hit home. I could see it in the way her shoulders sagged, the way she stopped making eye contact. For all her social media confidence, Jessica knew she was playing dress-up in a business she didn't understand. I work really hard, she said quietly. Working hard and working effectively are two different things. You've been working hard at creating content for Instagram instead of building a sustainable business model. Mom stood up from her chair, clearly ready to end this conversation before it went any further. Alex, I think you've made your point. We all know the business is struggling, but that doesn't mean we should give up on your sister. I'm not giving up on Jessica. I'm pointing out that you've gambled my entire future on a business that was never viable, and now you're talking about risking family assets to continue funding something that's already proven to be a failure. It's not a failure, Jessica said, but her voice cracked on the words. Then explain to me how burning through $200,000 in 8 months while consistently losing money isn't a failure. She couldn't. None of them could. Because the numbers didn't lie, even if they'd been lying to themselves about what those numbers meant. I just need more time, Jessica said finally, and for the first time since she'd walked in, she sounded like the little sister I remembered from childhood instead of the polished influencer persona she'd been wearing like armor. Time won't fix a fundamentally flawed business model, Jess, and it definitely won't bring back my inheritance money. The kitchen fell silent except for the sound of Jessica's phone buzzing with notifications. Probably followers commenting on whatever inspirational quote she'd posted that morning about manifesting abundance and following your dreams. So what do you want from us? Dad asked, his voice resigned. I closed my laptop and looked at each of them in turn. My parents, who'd chosen favorites and gambled with money that wasn't theirs to risk. My sister, who'd built her dream lifestyle on the foundation of my financial security without ever considering the cost to anyone but herself. I want my money back. Alex, that's not realistic, Mom said immediately. The money's been spent. We can't just magically make it reappear. Then you'll need to figure out how to repay it. Because this isn't over. I could see them processing this, realizing that I wasn't going to just accept the loss and move on the way they'd probably hoped I would. They'd underestimated me, assumed I'd be grateful for whatever scraps remained, and wouldn't push back against their decision. They were about to learn exactly how wrong they'd been about that. The next 3 weeks became a masterclass in strategic planning. While my family assumed I'd eventually calm down and accept the situation, I was methodically building a case that would recover every penny of my inheritance plus damages. My finance professors had always emphasized the importance of documentation and legal precedent, lessons that were about to prove invaluable in ways they'd never intended. Emma Thompson, my best friend since freshman year, became my unofficial research partner and emotional support system. She was pre-law with a sharp mind for detail and an even sharper sense of justice. When I showed her the complete financial breakdown of what had happened, her reaction was swift and decisive. "Alex, this isn't just family drama anymore. This is legitimate financial fraud," she said, reviewing the documents Michael Chen had provided. "Your parents had a fiduciary duty as trustees, and they violated that duty by using your inheritance for Jessica's business, without your consent." Emma connected me with her internship supervisor at a downtown Phoenix law firm, Sarah Williams, who specialized in trust and estate litigation. Sarah's initial consultation was both encouraging and infuriating, as she confirmed what I'd suspected: my parents had crossed legal lines that exposed them to serious liability. "The trust documents are clear," Sarah explained during our meeting in her glass-walled office overlooking the city. "Your grandmother specified that the funds were for your education and future financial security. Using them to capitalize someone else's business venture constitutes a breach of fiduciary duty, regardless of their authority as trustees." But Sarah also delivered sobering news about the practical challenges ahead. "The problem is that recovering the money depends on whether there are any recoverable assets. If Jessica's business continues to lose money and eventually folds, you might be pursuing a judgment against people who don't have the resources to pay it back." That's when I knew I needed to move quickly. Every day that Just Flow Yoga remained open was another day of my inheritance money being burned through operational losses. I needed to stop the bleeding before there was nothing left to recover. My first strategic move was documenting everything publicly. I created a detailed blog post titled "When Family Steals Your Future" and published it on Medium, laying out the entire situation with financial records, screenshots of Jessica's social media claims, and a timeline of how my inheritance had been systematically drained. I didn't use names, but anyone who knew our family would recognize the story immediately. The response was overwhelming. Within 48 hours, the post had been shared thousands of times, generating hundreds of comments from people who'd experienced similar family financial betrayals. More importantly, it caught the attention of local Phoenix media outlets who began reaching out for interviews. Jessica noticed the blog post first, of course. She called me screaming about how I was ruining her reputation and sabotaging her business by airing family financial details online. The irony of her complaint wasn't lost on me, considering she'd been broadcasting her lifestyle funded by my inheritance on Instagram for 8 months. "You're making me look like a villain," she sobbed into the phone. "People are connecting the dots and figuring out it's about my studio. I'm getting negative comments on all my posts now. Maybe because you are the villain in this situation, Jess. You spent money that wasn't yours on a business that was never viable, and now you're upset that people know about it." "I didn't know it was your inheritance money specifically," she protested, though we both knew that was a lie. "Mom and Dad just said they were investing in my future." "With my future, Jessica. They invested in your future using my future, and you never once questioned whether that was appropriate." The media attention escalated quickly. Phoenix New Times picked up the story, running a piece about family financial abuse that featured my situation prominently. Local television news followed, and suddenly, Jessica's carefully curated social media presence was being scrutinized by investigative reporters who were far more interested in the financial reality than the wellness fantasy she'd been promoting. The coverage had immediate consequences for Just Flow Yoga. Several of Jessica's remaining clients canceled their memberships after learning about the circumstances surrounding the studio's funding. Local wellness influencers who'd been promoting her classes distanced themselves from the controversy. Most damaging of all, the property management company that leased her space began asking questions about her ability to continue paying rent. But the real breakthrough came when a Phoenix business reporter named David Parker contacted me after reading the Medium post. He'd been investigating predatory business practices in the local wellness industry, and my story fit perfectly into a larger pattern he'd been documenting about inexperienced entrepreneurs opening luxury studios with unrealistic business models. "Your sister's situation isn't unique," David explained during our phone interview. "I've found at least 6 similar yoga or wellness studios that opened in the Phoenix area over the past 2 years, with massive startup costs, unsustainable rent, and no realistic path to profitability. The difference is that most of them used investor money or business loans, not family inheritance funds." David's investigation revealed something that made my blood boil. Jessica hadn't just stumbled into a bad business model. She'd been advised by a wellness business coach named Brittany Walsh, who charged entrepreneurs $15,000 for consultation packages that essentially taught them to prioritize Instagram aesthetics over financial sustainability. The consultation package Jessica had purchased included advice on creating a luxury experience that justifies premium pricing and, quote, leveraging family support systems for initial capitalization. In other words, she'd paid someone $15,000 of my inheritance money to teach her how to spend the rest of my inheritance money ineffectively. When David published his investigative piece, it included interviews with several other entrepreneurs who'd been coached by Brittany Walsh and subsequently failed. The article painted a picture of a consultant who was essentially teaching people to build businesses designed for social media rather than actual profitability. The article's publication triggered a cascade of consequences that I hadn't anticipated but certainly didn't discourage. Brittany Walsh's business coaching practice came under scrutiny, with several former clients coming forward to describe how her advice had led to financial disasters. More importantly for my situation, the article established a clear pattern of irresponsible business guidance that strengthened my legal case against everyone involved. Sarah Williams was thrilled with the media coverage because it created public pressure and established a clear record of how my inheritance had been misused. "Public attention often motivates settlements," she explained. "When people are facing potential embarrassment and legal costs, they're more likely to negotiate." The pressure was clearly getting to my family. Dad called me several times, alternating between anger about the public humiliation and half-hearted attempts to negotiate some kind of repayment plan. Mom sent long text messages about how I was destroying the family over money that would have been spent eventually anyway. But it was Jessica's response that really showed how desperate the situation had become. She announced on Instagram that she was, quote, taking a step back from social media to focus on personal growth and family healing, which was influencer speak for, quote, hiding until the controversy dies down. More significantly, she quietly listed several pieces of expensive yoga equipment for sale on Facebook Marketplace, including the $15,000 sound system and some of the imported meditation accessories. She was liquidating assets, which meant she was finally accepting that her business wasn't going to survive. The end came faster than I'd expected. 3 weeks after my blog post went viral, Jessica posted a farewell message on the Jess Flow Yoga Instagram account, announcing that the studio would be closing, quote, to pursue new opportunities for growth and service. She thanked her amazing community for their support and promised that this wasn't goodbye, just a transition to her next chapter. Of course, she didn't mention that the closure was due to massive financial losses funded by stolen inheritance money, or that the, quote, new opportunities were probably minimum wage jobs that might help her pay back what she owed me. 2 days later, I received a call from a lawyer representing my parents. They wanted to discuss a settlement agreement that would acknowledge their breach of fiduciary duty and establish a repayment plan for my inheritance. The proposed terms included full restitution plus interest, paid over a 10-year period, along with a formal apology and agreement to never discuss the situation publicly. I reviewed the settlement offer with Sarah Williams, who recommended accepting it with some modifications to ensure the payments were secured and enforceable. "This gets you your money back with interest, and it holds them accountable for what they did," she explained. "Most importantly, it establishes legal precedent that what they did was wrong." The final settlement included provisions for my parents to liquidate assets if necessary to accelerate the repayment schedule, restrictions on their ability to make large financial decisions without court oversight, and a requirement that they attend financial responsibility counseling. Jessica was also required to contribute any proceeds from the liquidation of yoga studio assets toward the restitution amount. 6 months later, I received the first quarterly payment, along with a formal letter of apology that had clearly been written by their lawyer rather than expressing any genuine remorse. But the money was real, and more importantly, the legal precedent was established. They'd officially acknowledged their wrongdoing and committed to making it right. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.